Okay, Masechet Shevuot, Daf Lamed Hey Amud Aleph. So this shiur, we're going to depart a little bit, at least for half of it, from Agadah and go into more of the realm of halacha because it actually talks about Ilchot Safrut and Sofer Stam. It's close to my heart. And it starts from an a midrash, but it also talks about certain halachot. In particular, something that Oren and I have been talking about a lot, and that's
Shechinah.
The questions around writing Shem Hashem. Right? So when a Sofer Stam writes a Sefer Torah, so he has to be Mekadesh before he writes a Shem Hashem. Right? There's a mitzvah to be Mekadesh Shem Hashem, you're not allowed to erase it. And there are psukim all throughout the Torah where it's not clear if something should be a Shem Hashem or not. So we'll actually learn some of the examples, and we'll spend maybe the first half of this year dealing with some of the halachic interesting questions there. And then we'll transition into one particular example where it's not clear if a name is considered kadosh or not, and see how it ties into a broader idea around achnasat Orchin, and in general about how we should view the life of Avraham Avinu. Okay, so if we start with Masechet Shevuot, we can skip the Mishnah just in the interest of time and start with the Gemara, and we'll circle back to the sources when we get to them in Bereshit. But the Gemara says as follows. The Mishnah discusses certain oaths that you make in court, and it says, if you swear b'Shem Hashem, so then you're chayav because you used the Shem Hashem, and it includes in the list of the different types of Shem Hashem, Chanun, Rachum, and things like that. So the Gemara asks, L'meimer de Chanun v'Rachum Shemot Neinhu. So are you telling me that the word Rachum is a Shem Hashem that has kedusha? The word Chanun, Rachum, or Minhu?
You also need to say something before you say you write Shem Hashem.
That's right. You have to say the Shem Kedushat Hashem.
Out loud?
Yeah, you're supposed to say the Shem Kedushat Hashem and have kavanah.
Kadosh.
No.
Every saying the Shem Tzitzit, the Shem Tzat Tefillin.
Yeah, before you write Hashem Hashem in Sefer Torah, you say the same Kedushat Hashem. Yeah. So the question is, which names do you do that for, right? So, are we saying if before you write the word Chanun, like in the Yud Gimel Midot, should you say that? Right, that's the question.
It's a better question. If you don't say it, it means it's on the Shem Hashem and you can erase it? Oh.
Very good. Let's find out. Oh boy.
We'll find out.
We're going to answer Kobe's question.
What was his question?
Okay, let's listen, okay? His question was, if somebody's supposed to...
You all answering me?
Yeah. If somebody... Well, you're starting to get to the age where you're starting to talk back. It's good. Yeah. It's a shift in his participation level.
Wafers of transcendence.
Yeah.
Mama says I'm like an adult.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's great. Okay. Kobe's question was, if somebody writes a Shem Hashem in the Torah, but they're not mekadesh it when they write it, they forget to be mitkaven that this is a Shem Hashem.
There was a story like that.
Are you allowed to erase it afterwards? Okay.
Dome, that you told me.
Yeah, we'll get to it. We'll answer it soon. Or minhu. Okay, we have a contradiction. Yes, shemot shenimchakim, yes, shemot shenenam nimchakim. There are some names that you can erase and some names that you can't erase. Elo and shemot she'en nimchakim. These are the names you're not allowed to erase. Kegon, kel, elokecha, elokim, elokechem, ke asher ke. Aleph Dalet is Aleph Dalet Nun Yud. And then V'yud Hey is Yud V'Hei Vav Hey. And then Shakai, Tzavakot. Hare Elu Einim Chakin. These are the holy names that do not get erased. Aval, Hagadol, Hagibor, Hanora, Ha'adir, Ha'chazak, Ha'amid, Ha'azuz, Chanun, V'Rachum, Erech Ha'payim, V'Chesed, Hare Elu Nimchakim. So we have a Braita that clearly differentiates.
Only Shem Hashem.
Question mark, because this is it's a contradiction. It's saying this Braita is teaching me. Yeah.
Only 10 words in the whole Torah can't erase.
There are 10 Shemot Kedoshim Basof, right? The halacha is actually koveh. There's 10 Shemot Kedoshim, and most of them are listed in this Braita. But it differentiates between the specific names of Hashem and then also these attributes and says those are erasable. And the reason it's a question is because we started by saying, but if I take an oath and I say Chanun, B'Shem Chanun or B'Shem Rachum, the oath is binding. So doesn't that seem to contradict, right? Because then why am I allowed to erase them? Amar Abai, matnitin b'mishu, chanun b'mishu, rachum ka'amar. So when the Mishnah said, I take an oath with the name Rachum, it doesn't mean just Rachum, it means the Mishnah is shorthand for b'mishu Rachum. That's what it really means. And then it's a clear reference to Hashem, and so the oath is binding. But if I write mishu Rachum, that's not Hashem, and I can erase it. Amar le Ravi, hachi b'shamayim va'aretz nami. Okay, so the Mishnah actually talks about someone who takes an oath, b'shamayim uva'aretz, it's not a valid oath. But you could say, b'misha b'shamayim uva'aretz. So then why isn't that valid? B'misha b'shamayim uva'aretz shel kamar. So hachiyash tahatam kevan deleka midei acharina deikar rachum mechanun. Vadai b'mishu chanun, vadai b'mishu rachum kamar. Hacha kevan deika shamayim uva'aretz b'shamayim uva'aretz kamar. So the answer is, it's an interesting. I don't know how strong the answer is. It says the difference is if someone takes an oath with the word rachum, you can understand he's saying b'mishu rachum, and there's only one who is referred to as rachum, and that's Hashem. So it's clear that it's talking about rachum. But if you say, I swear b'shamayim uva'aretz, so you could be talking about the shamayim uva'aretz, and not about the one who created the shamayim uva'aretz. Okay, fine. Okay, so we'll learn now a couple of halachot, and then we'll get into the Agarata. Tanu Rabbanan katav aleph lamed me'elokim yud vehei me'Hashem harei ze eino nimchak. Okay, so if you wrote, let's say you're writing the word Elokim, and you write just Aleph Lamed, okay? Which is itself a Shem. Mm-hmm. So can you erase that because you didn't write the whole name? And so here we learn, no, you cannot. Same thing with if you write Yud Hey and don't finish it yet with the Vav, that is already Kadosh because it's a name of Hashem.
They're both Shem Hashem.
That's right. However, Shin Dalet Mishakai, Aleph Dalet Me'Hashem, Tzadi Bet Mitzvakot Harizin Nimchak, right? And the difference is, even though I'm writing a Shem Hashem, that if I were to complete it, it would be Kadosh, the part that I wrote is not a Shem yet, so it doesn't have the Kedusha, I'm still allowed to erase it. Okay? Rabbi Yossi Omer Tzvakot Kulo Nimchak, Shelo Nikra Tzvakot Ela Al Shem Yisrael, Shnemar Votzeti Tzivotai Et Amir B'nei Somer Et Mitzrayim, Amar Shmuel Ein Alach Rabbi Yossi. Okay, and then there's a question about the name Tzvakot, if it's on the same level as the rest. Tana Rabbanan. Anything that's a prefix or a suffix can be erased. Okay, what's an example? Lefanav ketzad, what are some prefixes? La Hashem lamed nimchak. So if Sofer writes lamed, and then yud, and then hey, and then vav, and then hey, so according to this Breita, you can erase the lamed. Okay, and then you're not over the sur of erasing Shem Hashem. Because it's a prefix.
The lamed?
Yeah.
Why not the hey? Oh, that makes it Shem Hashem.
Because that's part of the name. Yep. Okay, ba Hashem bet nimchak, va Hashem vav nimchak, etc., etc. Okay, and then in the middle of the second line, la'acharav ketzad, and what's a suffix? Elokeinu, nu nimchak, right? If I erase the nun vav in Elokeinu, Elokechem, hem at the end, Elokehem, the hem at the end is a suffix, your God. So that can be erased. So according to the Breita, you can erase either the beginning or the end, and it's okay. Acherim omrim, but others say le'acharav eno nimchak shekvar kitsho Hashem. Right? Once I read Elokeinu, so once I wrote the Elokei, I've already been mekadesh that name, because once I get to that point where I finish the letters of the name, it's the kedusha is binding, and then the suffix inherits that kedusha, and I cannot erase the suffix anymore. Amravun alacha ka'acher, and this is in fact the alacha psuka that you're allowed to erase a prefix but not a suffix. Okay.
Also this.
Elokai. Elokai is a Shem Hashem. That's right. Elokai neshama. Okay. Before we finish the Gemara and Shevuot, let's just jump to Masechet Sofrim quickly. Masechet Sofrim is right. It's Mishnayot that deal a lot with Hilchot Ktivat Sefer Torah. So we'll see that there's a couple just of elaborations, and this is a whole shiur in itself, this whole topic, but just to kind of touch on it. Mishnah Perek Dal Mishnah Dal. V'chol shemot hedyotot sheotyotehem otiyot Hashem harei lo nimchakin. So let's say you have a word that's a normal word, but the letters are the letters that are identical with a Shem Hashem, so that can be erased. For example, there's a pasuk in the story of Gan Eden. Ki yodeh Elokim ki biyom alchalchem mimenu v'nifkechu einechem ve'itim ke'elokim. Harishon kodesh v'hasheni chol. Right? Because Hashem knows, God knows, that when you eat from the Etz Hadat Tov Vara, your eyes will be opened and you will be like a God. So the first Elokim in that pasuk is Kadosh, and you have to be makdish it before you write it, and it cannot be erased. The second Elokim, or Elohim, is not Kadosh, because it's saying you, but I didn't. That's the point. Because the second one is Vayitim Ke Elohim, talking about gods in the general sense, not about Hashem. And in that case, it's not Kadosh, you're allowed to say it, and you're also, you're allowed to erase it. Because it's not referring to Hashem, it's talking about Kivyachol other gods, which are not real. Yeah.
מישהו לא כעל
Well, like
מתאר
the
את זה problematic.
ורשעים זעם השם?
It's almost like a way dessert.
Right, exactly. These halachot are very important, actually, because of that sort of thing. You're dealing with an Yisur D'Oraita, and you might also be doing a Chil Hashem if you do it wrong. Right?
כמו שיש את הפסוק שאומרים כל בוקר, כי כל אלוהיה ממני לי, משהו שמיים עשה, זאת אומרת.
Yep. That's an example. בדיוק. Okay, הראשון קודש והשני חול. כי השם אלוקיכם הוא אלוקי האלוהים. Again, right, Hashem, your God. This one has a whole bunch of kadosh, and then the last one is not kadosh, because it's Hashem, your God, is the God of gods. And there are no other gods, so that's not kadosh, right? Rishon kodesh v'asheni chol is referring to the end.
Resha'im's God?
Right, biduk. Okay? V'adonai adonim rishon kodesh v'asheni chol. Then there's a pasuk which says Elokei Avraham ve'Elokei Nachor. Okay, so the Elokei Avraham is kodesh, but Elokei Nachor is chol, because Nachor worshipped other gods. Elohei Avihem is chol also. Okay? Now, there's a suffix. There's a mitzvah in Mishpatim, I think it says, Elokim lo tekalel, v'nasi be'amcha lo ta'or. And it's a machloket whether when it says, Elokim lo tekalel, v'nasi be'amcha lo ta'or, האם הכוונה לשופט או הכוונה להשם?
יש גם את הפסוק שאומר, באו לפני האלוהים.
Right.
Which means like to in front of the judge.
Right.
Hashem, just a judge.
נכון. And the second half of the pasuk is nasi be'amcha lo ta'or, so it's talking about the leaders of the people. So, mashma kodesh v'chol. So it's mesupak. Rabbi Shimon Omer kodesh, he says no, it's referring to Hashem. And then a final two examples. כי על כן ראיתי פניך כראות פני אלוהים ותרצני הרי זה חול. This is when Yaakov is confronting Esav. So Yaakov says, seeing your face, it's like seeing the face of God, and I'm so happy to see you. Right? He's being a sycophant to Esav. So is the God that he's referring to... So now the questions are more tricky, right? Like we're dealing with examples where it's not clear. Is he saying Hashem, or is he saying like a God, right? So the verdict here is he's talking about just seeing your face, like seeing the face of a God, right? And then Machanei Elokim Harizeh Kodesh. That's talking about with Machanaim, I think. Okay, so just very quickly want to give this one small example. If we skip to the very end, just because this is I am terrible these days at these pictures. But listen to this example, and then we'll get into the Agadata. Okay. There's a work, Keset HaSofer, which is one of the main works of Sofer Stam. It's kind of almost like a Shulchan Aruch of Safrat, okay? And then there's a commentary, Lishkat HaSofer, which is like the Bach and the Taz equivalent of the Keset HaSofer. Yes, you do. So this is a specific example that I like. Maaseh b'Sofer shebepasuk Vayomer Hashem Elokim el Nachash. So when Hashem is cursing the snake after the whole story of Gan Eden, so it says Vayomer Hashem Elokim el Nachash. So what happens? The Sofer is writing Dileg et Hashem Elokim v'tistapek achar kach ma hayta kavanato bekitvo tevat el. So what did he write? He wrote Vayomer Hashem el Nachash. He skipped the word Elokim by accident. The Sofer. Right, the pasuk is Vayomer Hashem Elokim El Nachash, and he wrote Vayomer Hashem El Nachash. What?
The problem is he's written El.
He's written El, but he doesn't remember. He doesn't remember if he had kavanah when he wrote the El. If he meant to write Elokim and got distracted, or he just skipped the word Elokim and never had the intent to begin with, and he just wrote El Nachash. Very good.
To say El as Elokim.
Right.
So we just finished
No,
it.
El, he just says El, God.
No, he wasn't adding.
I know I did. And then he just... If he skipped it, it's fine, because he did... El means like... And then you could finish it, and then you could do a next word, like
El Nachash.
the wheel one.
Right, exactly. So it's not clear if it's that, or if he meant to write Elokim and just forgot to end off Elokim, but he infused the El with Kedusha, right? So that's the question here. Like, he doesn't remember what his kavanah was. Im hayta kavanato rak tevat El, ve'et Hashem Elokim shachach legam, right? Did he write Vayomer Hashem El Nachash, and just he forgot the word Elohim, and that he just forgot the word. And then El Nachash, he didn't infuse the word El there with any specific meaning, because it's just the continuation of the pasuk. Oulai הייתה כוונתו לכתוב את השם, וכתב שתי האותיות El. He meant to write Elohim, right? He said, Vayomer Hashem, then he had kavanah to write Hashem, El, and then he was looking in some tikkun, and then he saw the word El, and then he just continued Anachash.
That's what I said.
Right. So it's not clear which one it was, okay? So he comes to his teacher.
It's like he just stopped in the middle of Elohim.
Yeah, maybe one of his kids came and distracted him when he's in the middle of writing. Who knows? It's hard to say.
Maybe he needed to go to the bathroom.
Could be.
1 second, you said you have to say...
The Dapim Makor are all messed up, so you might have to share, I'm sorry.
So is this...
The black ink ran out.
Yeah, this is a better one.
Did you say you have to say something before you write Hashem's name?
L'shem Kedushat Hashem.
So did you write that? Did you say it before you said it?
He doesn't remember.
Exactly the question, Shimon.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
He doesn't remember what his kavanah was and what he said. Okay? So he comes with the question, V'hore hamore, ki limchok tevat el eino rashai. So the teacher is, the psak is, on the one hand, you can't erase it. Why can't you erase it? Shema kidsho. Because maybe he was makdish it and he wrote Hashem Hashem and he had the kavanah to write Elohim, and just didn't finish it. But as we learned earlier in the Gemara and in Masechet Sofrim, if you write Aleph Lamed from the name Elohim, it's Kadosh, right? So you can't erase it. Because maybe it has kedusha. Shema kidsho velimchok tevat hanachash uleashlim et Hashem l'shtei otiyot elu gam ken eno rashai. But he also can't. Right? Remember, he wrote Vayomer Hashem el hanachash. So you might say, okay, erase the word hanachash. And then it says, Vayomer Hashem El, and then turn the El into Elohim El HaNachash. And squeeze in the rest of the pasuk where HaNachash used to be. You can't do that either. Why not? Ulashlim et Hashem, l'shtei otiyot, elu gam ken eno rashai, l'shem lo kidsho. Because maybe...
Hanachash isn't Shem Hashem.
Right. It's not that you can't erase HaNachash. You're allowed to erase HaNachash, but you can't add the Hey Yud Mem Sofit to the El that's there, because maybe you didn't have kavanah when you first wrote El, and now you are making El into a Shem Hashem, but it doesn't have Kedusha. You're not allowed to do that either. And therefore, Al Korchach Yigdor Tevat El V'yichtov Mechadash Et Hashem HaKadosh. So he says you actually have to scrape the word El, scrape. This is a shita that the Sofrim use. You kind of scrape underneath with a very thin blade. You remove that piece of parchment and bury it, and then you can write on top of the next layer of parchment and start over, and write Elohim El Nachash from scratch. So this is just like a very specific, interesting example that shows how complex the halachot that our Gemara in Shevuot is dealing with. And there's a whole Ishkat Sofer on this that goes into all this detail where he says maybe there's a difference if it's this Sofer asking the question versus if some Stam Shaila comes, because if it's some Shaila, you would assume that somebody wouldn't have this lapse of judgment, but the Sofer himself is the one coming with the Shaila, so you have to relate to it differently, and there's a whole discussion there. But be that as it may, what I want to focus on...
How do you waste the ink?
So you take a very thin... Correct. So you take a very thin blade, I'll show you when we go home, like a razor blade, and you go underneath.
You have it?
Yeah.
You use the first stuff?
Yeah. That's why we're learning this. It's you go underneath the parchment and you can scrape it up, and you have to do it very carefully so it doesn't cut, because you're not allowed to cut the letters. If you cut the letters, then you're over on the source. You have to scrape it very carefully, but it doesn't.
Out, basically.
Yeah, you remove this thin piece of
that toy
cloth.
I bought.
I'm not sure.
You put in the water in it.
Oh yeah, like that. So that's how you deal with a Shem Hashem that has an issue that you need to remove and put in the Gniza. No, I wouldn't say that. Worse things have happened. Okay, so that was the halachic introduction, and now let's get into the Agadata. And in the interest of time, maybe go a bit more quickly, and that's on me. So let's go now to the top of the second page, okay? This is the continuation of the Gemara in Shevuot that just dealt with all the halachot, and now it's transitioning. Kol shemot amurim b'Torah be'Avraham kodesh. So in the story of Avraham and the three men, every time a Shem appears, it's kodesh. Because you remember, Masechet Sofrim, we dealt with all these examples where we're not sure if it's kodesh, if it's chol, if it's chol. So it says, well, by Avraham, every example is kodesh, chutz mizeh, except for one example, shu chol, shneimar, vayomer Adonai, imna matzati chen beinecha, al na ta'avor me'al
I
avdecha.
said Shem Hashem.
But did I? That's the question. Because it's
Oh,
chol,
you're telling me one day.
but it's chol, right? But Chanina ben Achi Rabbi Yoshua Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Mishum Rabbi Elazar Modai Amru Af Ze Kodesh. This name is also Kodesh. What are they arguing about? So if you go to the Psukim, right? Vayira alav Hashem belonim amrei v'hu yoshev petach haro kechol mayon. So Hashem appears to Avraham as he's sitting at his tent. Vayisayna vayar v'nei shlosha anashim nitzivim alav. Right? He looks and he sees three people coming to him. Vayar tzikotam mipetach haro v'yishtachu aratzav. Right? And he goes and he greets them at the entrance of his tent and he bows down. Vayomar, and he says,
I bows down to him.
out of respect, not to worship them, just to be polite. Vayomar Adonai namatzati chen beinecha al na ta'avor me'al avdecha. So the question is, who is that?
You say like
That's Adam
Adonai
Malachim.
is like more than one Adon. That's all.
Right. So when they say chutz mizeh shu chol, they're saying Adonai. He's talking to the three
Why do
men.
they say it as like W instead of just writing it?
Oh, that's a Safaria. I don't know. Safaria did it
It's
that
very
way.
weird.
It is. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know why it does that. But yes, Kobe's right. Right. One way to understand this is he's talking now to the three men who just came to him, and he says to them, "My masters, right? Good sirs, please don't leave. Let me serve you,
It's very
etc.,
clearly
etc."
from the Psukim, Vayomer stops. Adonai namatzati
No, it's not saying that Hashem said it.
זה ממש, it's very clearly from the טעמים. ויאמר, הצטנחת, you stop, ויאמר, and then אדוני, נא מצאתי חן בעיניך.
No, he's definitely talking to them. It's not a question of Hashem saying this pasuk.
Nobody's really Hashem saying the pasuk. He said maybe ויאמר, and then he talks to Hashem, אם נא מצאתי, like he talks maybe to God, saying like, אם נא מצאתי חן בעיניך, please make those people to
So how
stop.
does this Isnachta help you know one
No,
another?
because first of all, it means ויאמר, he stops, and then probably to me, it seems like,
But that doesn't prove these other them.
yeah, but I'm saying I think it makes it more clearly to me. Makes it very clear to me.
So Kobe is absolutely right in the machloket here, which is I'm not talking about the Nachta. I'm talking about the machloket. That when one opinion says shu chol, it's saying my masters in the plural. But then what does it mean av ze kodesh? What does that opinion mean? So it means that name must be Hashem, and Avram is talking to Hashem. But isn't that a little strange? Because in the continuation, he's talking to the three men, right? He says, "V'chatzu raglechem v'yishanu tachad ha'etz," right? I'll get you some food. Da 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 da. He's clearly talking to the men, and they answer him, "Vayamru kein ta'aseh kasher dibarta." So what is this inserting his conversation to Hashem? So look now at the continuation of the Gemara in Shevuot. It says, "Keman azla," the opinion that says that name is Kodesh. Who is it like? Ha'adam Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, Gdולה הכנסת אורחין יותר מהקבלת פני השכינה. Okay? So Rav says it's greater to do achnasas orchim than to receive the presence of the Shechina.
How does that explain?
How does that explain it? Good. How does that explain it? You tell me. How does that explain
If he's
it?
talking to Hashem, then he wouldn't be saying this.
Right? Vayomar Hashem.
Because he says it's
Imna
Gdusha, even though
matzati-
he was talking to the masters, because the Shechina,
No, he's talking to
it's much better than-
he's talking to Hashem. Avram is talking. Avram.
Other way around.
No, Avram. This is what you said before. You were right before. You
Old Kobe knew better.
correct it right. Vayomar Hashem. Now Avram's talking to Hashem. Imna matzati chen beinecha, to Hashem al na ta'avor me'al avdecha. Because what happens right before? Ve'era elav Hashem v'lonim amrei. Avram's talking to God. Then Avram sees these three people coming towards him. So he says to God, three malachim.
No, it's not.
He says to Hashem, please wait here. Right? Imna matzati chen beinecha al na ta'avor me'al avdecha.
For me.
Proof sounds.
Don't leave me because we're in the middle of the conversation. You and me, Hashem. But I have to go. Yukachna me'at mayim v'chatzu raglechem. So I learned from that, it's more important to greet and be hospitable than even to receive the Pnei Shechina.
The proof could go either way, though, because when you said the proof, I assumed it was the opposite, meaning because we know that it's more important to do Machmas Sochem than spending time with the Shekhinah. Therefore, you could argue that he's definitely talking to them and not to Hashem here, because this is more important. The more important.
Meaning,
The guest came along, so he immediately said to them,
God appeared to him
Right.
Then he sees the
And
angels.
then he sees guests, and he just ignores God and
Ignore.
That's not the
still
way-
learn
sounds
that
Tells
it's
him.
more
Wait a second.
important.
Just a second.
No, you don't have to say that. That's what I'm saying. It sounds like the. That's the
Meaning
proof
either way
of-
you read it, it's still.
I hadn't thought of that. I hear what you're saying. I don't think the Gemara seems to assume that Avram, while he's comfortable prioritizing greeting these guests to Hashem, he's not just
So
gonna
he was like, Hashem was
just
talking
like
in
leave
fact-
Hashem mid conversation without excusing himself.
Hashem was talking Avram. What?
Yeah, it's like
What happened?
you bolt. You just see like leaves the conversation. Avram has left the chat. Like without no explanation. Yeah, but I hear you. I hadn't thought of that. That's a fair read, but it's clear from this Gemara that Keman Koto Azug. That what's brilliant about this, right, is that we have this famous that the Zug here is these two rabbis who say Av Ze Kodesh. That you have this total separate teaching, and we'll see it in the Gemara in Shabbat. And it's a famous idea, right? That Gdולה, הכנסת Orxin, יותר מהקבלת פני השכינה. But the source is based on this machloket about do I read this word as a Shem Hashem or as a Shem Chol? That is the springboard for this teaching
Which
about
word?
of Ado, whether it's a Shem Kadosh or it's a Shem Chol. Okay?
Or what is it talking about?
All right, so I'll catch you up
And then
after,
I will
okay?
know.
No, I'll catch you up after. The Gemara continues, and it gives another example. Kol shemot ha'amurim belot chol chutz mizeh shu kodesh. So now it's reversed. That every time it has a shem of adnut or of something in the story of Lot, it's never kadosh except once. Shneimar vayomer Lot alehem. So Lot's talking to the two angels. Al na Hashem. Hinei na matzah.
Exactly the opposite from Avram.
Exactly. Biduk. It's a fuch. Hinei na matzah avdecha chen beinecha. So, right? Please do not, instead of reading it as my masters, read it as Hashem. Why? Mi sheyesh be'ado la'amit v'la'achayot ze HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This pasuk is in the context.
I would say specifically in Lot's case, you would say Adonai is like masters because they came to save him. So it's like, please actually save me, please save me. That's what I say, no?
Yeah. And so the Gemara, right, I mean that's pshat, first of all. But the Gemara insists that this example of please not, masters, let me live and flee somewhere close by, the Gemara insists that he's talking to Hashem in that instance. But you're right, pshat is he's still talking to the angels. I think. And we can look at the psukim just to kind of clarify that actually there's a lot of potential Shem Hashems in the story of Lot. And it says all of them are chol except for one which is kodesh. So if you just look at the highlights here, so you have the Shem of Ad, like the Shem Adnu twice. And you have Shem Hashem of Yud Kei Vav Kei, 4 times. Okay? If we just look at these psukim, Vayomer, Hinei na, Adonai suru na el beit avdechem v'lin v'achtu aglechem. It's very parallel to with Avraham, right? That Avraham said, Vayomar Ado, right? Imna matzati chen be'enecha. And here Lot is saying also. But the Gemara says the Ado, there was a machloket about that Shem with Avraham, whether it was Kadosh or Chol. But the Gemara here is saying it's Chol by Lot, according to everyone, the first one. He's saying, my masters, come, let me host you. And then it continues, da-da-da-da-da-da. Then there's a few appearances of Shem, Yud Kei Vav Kei. And then at the end, right, where they say, it says, Vayhi kehotziam otam, one line above the last Shem Adnut. Vayhi kehotziam, Yud V'hei Vav V'hei, right. Vayhi kehotziam otam achutza, Vayomer, himalet al nefshecha pen tabit achare chaval tamod b'chol hakikar, hahara himalet pen tisafes. So the angels are saying to Lot, you have to run away now. And Lot says, Vayomer Lot elhem al na. And this is the machloket. For Kobe, the pshat also is that he's still talking to the angels. But the Gemara says this second one is him pleading with Hashem for mercy so that he shouldn't be killed. Okay? Now, if you look at the Marsha on the second page, I know we're jumping around here and we have a lot of sources to cover. The Marsha says, the Gemara of Kol Shemot Amurot Belot, it says they are all chol except for this one at the end, which is Kodesh, which we say is not the pshat. Marsha says, Hainu Shemot Shel Adnut. So the Gemara, when it says all the names are chol, So it's except for one, it's talking about the Shem Adnut. Aval Shemot Yud Hey Vav Hey Shektuvim Belot Vaday de Kodesh Hem Kedemochechei Mikrot. So what is the Maharsha saying? He says if you look at the story of Lot, we saw that the Shem Adnut appears twice, and Shem Hashem appears 4 times in the story. So Maharsha says when it says every name is Chol except one, it's talking about those 2 cases of Adnut. And there's one exception of the 2. It's not saying that these 4 cases of Hashem are Chol, right? Because Maharsha says if you look at those psukim, it's obvious that those are actually Shem Hashem, referring to Shem Hashem. Those have to be Kodesh, right? וכל קשה מה כאמר כל שמות דלות חול חוץ מכם והלא מצינו שם אדנות בלot שיהיה חול כי אם אחד הננה Adonai suruna. So the Maharsha ends with a question. He says, and if that's the case, then it's a bit of a strange language because it only has Shem Adnut twice in the story. So why would you say Kol Shemot Amurim Belot Chol Chutz Mechad Shu Kodesh if you're only talking about 2 names? Just say this one is Chol and this one is Kodesh. So that's the Maharsha's question, but he assumes that all the Shemot Hashem here have to be Kodesh. Because it's not the confusion of my masters versus
Maybe
Hashem.
just to try to say is like Lot used to say Shem Hashem as a Chol. The first time he says Kodesh when he needed between Chayv and Mavet. That was the first time actually there's some kavanah.
Okay, good. So you're very on point. The Iyun Yaakov it's very similar to what you said. Okay, the Iyun Yaakov is very similar to what you just said. Okay, a bit different, but you are mitkaven to his point here. Okay, just before we read the Iyun Yaakov very quickly, you could just answer the Maharsha that the Gemara has like a structure to it, right? It says Kol Shemot Amurim B'Torah B'Avraham Kodesh Chutz. Like all the names by Avraham are Kodesh except one which is Chol. So it's going to say by Lot, all the names by Lot are Chol except for one which is Kodesh, because it's writing in a certain parallel structure. So even though by Lot there's only 2, and it's a bit weird to say all except one when there's 2, but since by Avraham there's many, so it's keeping the same structure. You could argue that that's the Gemara. Yeah. But see what the Iyun Yaakov says. And it says here, chutz. Oh, of course. You got the source sheet with no black ink. But we're actually reading right now from that square. So that works out nicely. Yeah. So where it says chutz mizo, on the right side, okay? Chutz mizo shehu chol, shenemar vayomer. I'll read it if that's okay. Is that okay? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. שנאמר ויאמר אדוני משמע מזה דשמות המלאכים אף שמלאכי הקודש מותר למחוק. Right? Again, why do we care about this whole discussion? Because it's halacha l'maisa. Like when I write this, am I allowed to go erase this name afterwards? It's not just a theoretical exercise. It says if I see a Sefer Torah and this word is erased, like can I erase this word, right, or not? It's a real question. אך יש לומר, כיוון דאברהם סבור שהם אנשים ממש, אין ראיה. Okay, so he says that maybe since Abraham thought that they were not angels but people, you can't learn from here in general. But really what interests us is the next דיבור המתחיל, where it says, כל שמות האמורות בלot חול. כתב מרשה, היינו שם אדנות, אבל שמות הוויה שכתובים בלot, ודאי דקודש הם, כדמוכרי מקרות, וקרקע שמאי כדקאמר כל שמות דלות חול חוץ מי וכו', הלא מצינו שם אדנות בלot שיהיה חול כי אם אחד. הננה אדוני סורנה עד כאן לשונו. This is the Maharsha that we just saw in the previous source. He just quotes it, okay? And then he says, ולעניות דעתי כל דבריו ליטה. So he says, and in my humble opinion, everything he said is not. כיוון דקאמר כל שמות האמורות בלot, משמע יהיה איזה מי שיהיה בין שם אדנות או שם הוויה. So the Iyun Yaakov says, the simple explanation, the simple way to understand the phrase in the Gemara is every name by Lot is Chol except for one which is Kodesh, and it doesn't matter if it's a Shem Adnut or a Shem Havaya. Every name is Chol except for this one which is Kodesh. And the Maharsha's assumption that it's only referring to Shem Adnut, it's not correct. Okay, it says "Vak b'samuch etzel Micha mechalek yagavna." So that's the continuation of the Gemara where it talks about the story of Pesel Micha and it differentiates between the names. It's not really relevant for us. V'lo kan ve'od dechakash shemakshe maharsha hu kushya gdola de'en shayach lashon kol. Lachen nira li de'af de'ika shemot shem. Havaya, I think that says, Belot Sham. Oh boy, Yud Tet Shehem Kodesh. Hainu.
Half Yud Ki.
Yeah, I'm here. Hainu Ma shedibru melachim, Ma she'en ken Ma shediber Lot el chatanav, ki mashchit Hashem hu chol. Shere malachim amru lo, ki mashchitim anachnu. Okay, so basically. What's he saying? If you go back to the story...
He's referring to the Malachim as Elohim.
Right. He is referring... Lot in the story, when he says, this is Shem of Yud Kei Vav Kei, he's referring to actions that the Malachim are taking. And so then the Iyun Yaakov would say that the Shem of Yud Kei Vav Kei is Chol in the story. Because it's not actually referring to Hashem, it's referring to angels. Which would mean, when the Gemara says, Kol Shemot Amurim Belot Chol Chutz Mizeh Shu Kodesh, except for this last Shem Adnut, the other four instances of Yud Kei Vav Kei are references to the, not to Hashem, but to the, what Lot thinks, like Lot is talking and saying, oh, and then Hashem is doing this and this. He's talking about actions that the angels are doing. Because the angels say, Ki mashchitim anachnu, and then Lot says, it, when he's talking to his in-laws, oh, Hashem is mashchit, but he's actually referring to the angels. So then Yaakov says that when it says, Kol Hashemot Amrim Belot Chol, it's kemashmo, and what that means then is that the Shem Hashem, if a Sofer Stam is writing the Shem Hashem in this story of Lot, right, where he says, Ki mashchit Hashem et ha'ir, and the Hashem here is Yud Kei Vav Kei, not only can it be erased, you're not allowed to be Mekadeshet. It's a chol. You're not allowed to be Mekadeshet, because if you are Mekadeshet, you are being Mekadesh the Malachim and it's Avodah Zarah. So the machloket here between the Iyun Yaakov and the Maharsha is a very halacha, and he even says this at the end of his little piska here, which I'm not sure I brought in this screenshot. Yeah, I didn't bring it in the screenshot, but at the end, the Iyun Yaakov says, and my dispute here with the Maharsha has a lot of ramifications halacha l'maisa, because it really means if you're writing the stories as sofer, like A, can you go erase these names, but also like are you supposed to say l'shem kedushat Hashem when you write these words? And if you
say it, you're not supposed to say it.
Yeah, because then you're mekadesh something that's not allowed. That's chol. You're being mekadesh a reference to other gods or to angels, and you're not supposed to do that. That's a chilul Hashem in a way. You're not supposed to do that.
You don't want your sefer to be there.
Probably not. Not so picky, but I have some lines.
Number one, the Sefer Bereshit starts off with they call it the godly
For the first time, yeah, everybody does.
Yep.
the whole Na'aseh Adam b'tzalmenu b'dmutenu.
Yep.
Who's speaking?
Right.
The whole idea of in the name of what? In the name of what? So the whole, especially Sefer Bereshit, obviously the more towards the beginning, but it's a very not necessarily discernible who in the name of whom exactly it's referring to.
So that would be chol,
Okay, but
presumably.
okay, so obviously that's another interesting thing because who exactly were those people,
Right.
or not people, or the Midrash refers to them as Uzay Nazael. There's the two angels who were thrown out of Gan Eden.
Right.
We all know the Christian equivalent of that. But the Uzay Nazael, the claim is that their descendants probably were, whether it's the Nephilim or some kind of, how you understand that, who are those beings were, Bnei Elohim, or they were just people of a higher status,
Right.
just people.
Right. That's what we saw.
Judges or just.
So we saw that earlier, where we said there's more sources that we'll finish up, but to your point, where we saw earlier in Masechet Sofrim, when it says Elokim lo tekalel v'nasi b'mcha lo ta'or. So is Elokim lo tekalel talking about you're not allowed to curse Hashem, or you're not allowed to curse judges, or you're not allowed to curse important people, and that's a difference between whether it's kodesh or chol. That's your point. You have a lot of examples where it's not clear what you're supposed to do, and this is important lamasa because you have a mitzvah right on the line each time.
I think of it even more than that. I think that the whole, in a lot of ways, if you take a look at the midrash, there is a situation where, and we mentioned this earlier in different occasions, where, for example, there are quote unquote malachim which you're not supposed to pronounce their name, theoretically.
Okay.
Okay, not the ones that we say B'Shem Hashem Elokei Israel, B'Minim Michael, B'Smonim Gabriel, but ones who their names doesn't end with an El, for example.
Right.
You're not supposed to theoretically pronounce their name. Why? We mentioned the fact that Acher went through the Pardes and saw saw him sitting where he's not supposed to theoretically, and then he was thinking about Shtei Rashuyot, what's going on?
Right.
So and you think of in general, there is the Midrash. Every time the Midrash says, "Oh, Saro shel something," Sarayam, Saro shel Esav, there is a whole cabinet, so to speak. Yes.
Yeah.
Of whom? What's their status? Is there some kind of, I don't know, pyramid structure or something, lower and higher? What? Who gets to,
Right, but none of them are Shem Hashem, like you can't erase
yes,
himself.
but how do you refer to them? Are you supposed to pronounce their name fully, so to speak? Now, obviously, these things tend to also go to the absurd. For example, my name. If there's something I despise, is people sticking apostrophes in my name. Thank you very much. No, seriously. This is reductio ad absurdum. My name is Nathaniel. Thank you very much. My name is my name. Please pronounce it correctly. That's number one. Number two, stop. When you're writing my name, I've seen this with teachers. I've seen it
we're done?
Wherever.
That means we're done.
You're sticking apostrophes, commas, whatever in my name. Thank you. Don't. You don't want to write my name. You can erase my name. Feel free. Don't. This is where it comes down to.
Bye, Rabbi. Thank you.
Thank you. Think of it.
Yeah.
Sit down. Sit down.
I hear you. We just had a child. Middle name is Netanel. Right? Ami's middle name is Netanel.
So there you go. And anyone who has, because you see it today, and you ask yourself, to what absurdities are you willing to go in order to not, write something in sequence?
Did you like it?
Oh. It's someone's name, like for crying out loud, or for my family name, for example, it has 2 U's in it. Yeah. Stop sticking apostrophes in there. It's nuts. I'm sorry.
You get double apostrophe?
Yes. My children just got the
double apostrophe.
Okay? Enter the report card. I see my family name in there with an apostrophe. Why? Why?
Well, if you use an apostrophe, surely that's not 3 U's. You've made it double as bad. You go 2 Shem Hashem.
Well, I'm afraid to ask, what's your middle name?
It's Meir, by the way.
Meir.
Aleph Yud.
Okay, but it's just.
But what's so funny?
Sometimes I find myself dumbfounded. I was like, "What on earth are you doing?" No, seriously.
Is this a shiur of laughing?
No, it's not. It's we're doing Milta de B'dichuta, which is
Well, it's also it's a little
okay. All right, let me wrap. Let's wrap it up.
Isn't supposed to be funny.
You're allowed to enjoy it. It's okay.
We're allowed to enjoy, but it's not funny.
Okay, we're gonna just finish up. That's all good. Yeah. You mentioned actually Gabriel Michael Rafael, so you were mitkaven to the next source. So just to finish off, right? We talked about with Avram Avinu, right? That first example of Vayomer, right? Hashem, and we said if the Hashem is Kodesh or Chol, right? Is he saying my master or my masters? Is he saying Hashem? So Breshit Rabbah, it says Vayomar Ado, right? In Mamatzati Chen, Taner Bechia Lagadol Shebehen Amar Ze Michael. So there's an opinion in the Medrash that says he's talking just to Michael, the angel. and not to Hashem. Okay? Masechet Derech Eretz Rabbah says as follows: Zechin matzinu begimel malachim sheba'u etzel Avram Avinu ve'Elohem Gavriel, Michael, ve'Raphael. Okay, so that the three men who came to Avram were those three angels. Okay, please don't do that. Okay, Gavriel ba la'afoch et Sodom et Amorah. Gavriel's mission was destructive. Raphael ba l'rapot Avram. Raphael's mission was to heal after Brit Milah, Avraham. And Michael ba l'vaser et Sarah, and he came to announce the birth of Yitzchak. Ve'am Michael ba'emtza ve'Gavriel mimino Raphael mismolo, like the famous song, based on the ranking of these angels. As Natan Kel was saying.
I'll remember that one. Thank you, but okay. I guess you have to throw it.
Thank God Yosef is over Eliyahu. Otherwise, really
Kelikau.
Yes, it becomes to the absurd where I call it the kuf language. It's like, let's stick in so many kufs. You didn't know where to begin, where.
My name is Hobby, because of the hay.
I'm sorry.
What did he say? What did he say?
It's Hobby, but because it's a hay, so I changed it to Hobby.
Oh, it was Hobie? Hobie Luika. Okay.
You can change it to Hobby.
Are we talking about names now?
Yes. Okay. No, wait. I need to bring us back on track so we can go to sleep. Okay. So Michael was in the middle because he was the most important, which makes sense with what we saw in Bereshit Rabbah, that Michael was the Gadol Shebahen. But look at what the Masechet Derech Eretz Rabbah does here. וכיוון שראה אברהם אבינו את מלאכי השרת, בעתה שכינה ועמדה למעלה ממנו. So the Shekhinah was there on top above him. Amar lahem, Raboisai, hamtinu li ad shepater mishchina. So Avraham says to the angels, wait here while I... what? Sorry? Why I say goodbye to the Shekhinah. She gdola mikem. Shneemar, vayomar, Hashem yimna matzatichem benecha ana tavor malavdecha. וכיוון שנפטר אברהם אבינו מן השכינה, בא והשתחווה להן והכניסן תחת האילן, שנאמר, ייקחנה מהידיים ורחצו. ואחר כך וקחה פתחה. In other words, the Masechet Derech Rabbah seems to kind of combine them a little bit.
But Hashem here is Ado.
Right, Hashem is the Shekhinah. Right, Hashem is the Shekhinah, but this is kind of combining the idea that he was talking to the angels, but the Hashem is him talking to the Shekhinah, but it's kind of combining the two. Just to conclude, the Gemara in Shabbat Daf Kuf Chav Zayin Amud Aleph, Amar V'yudam Marav Gdula Knesset Orchim Mikabal Shechina, Tichtiv Vayomar Hashem Yina Matzattichem Beinecha Na Tavor Melavdecha. That's what we saw in earlier in the Gemara, that it brings this that it was Kaman Azla Kazugazeh, right? Like those two opinions. And then the Gemara in Shabbat continues and says, Amar Rabbi Elazar, Bo Re'eh Shelo K'midat HaKadosh Baruch Hu Midat Basar V'Adam. Midat Basar V'Adam En Katan Yachol Lomar Lagadol Hamten Ad Shavuot Tzlacha. Right? When it comes to flesh and blood, a person can't say to his king, wait here, I got to go deal with something and then I'll come back. Right? Of course. V'ilog b'HaKadosh Baruch Hu K'tiv Vayomar Hashem Yina Matzati. But Avram Avinu did that. Now, the reason this is important is because we're supposed to learn something from this. Aside from the importance of Achnasat Orchim, right, to teach you it's more important than Kabbalat Shechinah, which is an important message, it also teaches you that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Mochel B'Kvodo, right? That Hashem, unlike a human king, doesn't mind that Avraham Avinu is going to deal with these malachim instead of talking to him, and that's also a milah that we're supposed to potentially imitate.
Interesting, because what happens when you're in the middle of davening Shmoneh, for example, even if a king comes next to you, you're not supposed to stop.
It's interesting.
You're not supposed to.
Fair enough.
To continue with.
Fair enough. Okay. Yep. Teku, yeah. And the Ben Yoyada, in his commentary, he says the following. This is a nice diuk to finish off. Kasha omro bo, lehechan yavo. Ume'eze makom yatsa. So he says, when Rabbi Elazar says, bo re'eh, like, come and see, which is just a standard phrase of, like, come, let's learn something together. So Ben Yoyada says, what do you mean, come and see? Like, where are you coming from? Where'd you go? Like, what are you talking about? Right, exactly. Cotton-eyed Co, or whatever. Anyway, okay, pardes. Right, we know there's 4 aspects of learning Torah: the pshat, the rash, etc. וכפי חלק הפשט, אין מכאן הוכחה לכך. כפי הפשט, המקרא יתפרש, אדוני, אם נא מצאתי חן בעיניך ושמך. Right, pshat is that Avram is talking to the people or to the angels, right? He's saying Adonai, my masters. That's pshat. וכמו שכתב רש"י בחומש, את הגדול שבהם היה אומר כן. And Rashi actually quotes the Bereshit Rabbah that he was actually specifically talking to the greatest among them, which was Michael. Okay? אך בחלק הדרשה, Dorshin Shem Zeh Kodesh, right? But when you look at it from a drash perspective, you say that the reference there is not to the angels, but to Hashem. V'lakadosh Baruch Hu Omer, to make it, ask him to wait so that you could learn the importance of Machnasat Orchhin. Lezeh Amar Bo Re'eh. What does he mean by Bo Re'eh? Ratzono Lomar Tzeh Michelek HaPshat Ubo Lechelek HaDrash. Come into my house, come into my world of exposition and exegesis. V'az like Jesus, like no intent there to anything else. Freudian
comment.
Yeah, and just to really kind of bring it home, last sentence. Avraham says, "Vayomar Adonai Namsati Chen Beinecha." We saw a big machloket, pshat, drash, maybe yes, maybe no, whether this is kodesh or chol. By Lot, he also says, "Vayomer Hinei Adonai Suruna Al Beit Avdechem." They're both talking in the context of angels, right? Halacha lemaisa. This Adonai is kodesh. You have to be mekadesh it when you write it, and you are not allowed to erase it. By Avraham, greeting the angels, and this Adonai by Lot is chol, and you're not allowed to be mekadesh it, and you are allowed to erase it, even though they're spelled exactly the same, and the pasuk is nearly identical of Avraham and Lot, each talking to a group of people and saying to them, Adonai, please let me serve you and give you food and drink, don't leave me. But here it's referring to Hashem, and here it's referring to the angels, and therefore the halacha is different about how I'm supposed to treat this one versus that one. Shkoyach. All right, good. That was good. A fiery one, lively.
Yeah,
shkoyach.